4:35 on March the 5th, 2024. I call to order the Budget, Finance, and Administrative Committee meeting. Moment of silence, please. Mr. Root?
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Dearest Father, finances, money is spoken about a lot in your word and throughout principles all throughout this earth and in history. It's one of the most important things that we have to be mindful of is how we steward the resources that you give us. So thank you for those resources. Thank you for the resources for the county. And please help the council now in their stewardship efforts to use the county funds wisely and as you'd have them do it. In your name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Mr. Hartley?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The motion to approve the August 15th, 2023 special meeting minutes.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is 4A.
Okay, Ms. Brock, discussion item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Budget, Finance, and Administration Committee meeting. We are in absence of Mr. Davis today, but he did send a message that he did approve of the priority list that I had sent out earlier. We'll start this meeting this evening with a brief overview of a budget update for current year, because you can always tell the prediction of the next budget year over the current budget year on normal and sundry items. And Ms. Liddell Price, Finance Director, will be providing that update for you. Thank you, Ms. Price.
Well, I laid one of these out. You received one last time, and I wasn't sure if you'd bring it back, so I made another copy. But as you'll see, it's just that first page is the contents, what it's all about, all of the different funds. But then the next page, page 3, we get into the actual revenue history for the general fund. And you'll see there the projections are in the orangish reddish color. And the difference is about $1,092,000. Everything is running along pretty smoothly. You'll see there's a few, like the charges for services and the interest revenue. You know, the interest is really good right now. I'm not sure when that will start falling back down. And the next page is the expenditures. And the difference there in the projected and the amended budget is about $770,000. So we're running pretty close, but to the good. And then the next page is about the millage rates and trends. On the top part there, you'll see where between 18 and 19, it increased about 2.5%, and then 6.5 or 6.2, and then it leveled off, and then we started coming back down 1.25, and then 21 to 22, we dropped 3.78% in the millage rate. And then you can see how the value of that mill is climbing every year. And then the bottom part of that page is the debt margin. This is as of 2023, where our debt, we had $8,417,000 worth of debt, and you know this year the 23 GO bond will show up in this coming audit. And the special revenue funds. They're pretty simple. They're just revenues and expenditures. And for those specific things that they can only be used for instance, the first one is the Emergency Service Special Revenue Fund, and that is for the unincorporated areas support. And then the next one is the 911 surcharges, and there's no tax money there at all. That is through the 911 surcharges that we get from the state, the Budget Control Board, AT&T. Okay, and then the next page is Tri-County Tech. That's three mills, has been for quite a while. That is to do our portion of the third of the operational and the Pendleton upgrade. During the FY '23, no, the '24, I have a typo right there. I've got 21, 22, 23, and that should be 24. Y'all voted to transfer $50,000 of that to the one-time capital request. Because we only pay them what they ask for. So that, that fund balance builds a little along every year.
Ms. Price, may I make a correction to that? It was 500,000.
What'd I say?
50.
I'm sorry, 500,000.
That's okay.
Okay, and then the road maintenance special revenue fund. That is for your road paving, your maintenance throughout all of the county roads. And I believe there's going to be another big paving contract coming up soon to help sort of smooth out some of those roads. And then the last special revenue fund is one of the new ones, is the Community Health and Human Services. This one was 7.1 mils, and it's county and community health, human services that include the municipalities, fire contracts, and the Prisma contracts. Also for the Rosa Clark medical indigent that we pay to the state, upstate mental health for the 3 counties, and then the Oconee Disability and Special Needs Board. And then in the smaller categories, it's like the Community Tree, Tomasi DAR, Our Daily Rest, and just, when people are in need or if there's some crisis comes along that we can help with. Okay, and then the capital projects funds. The Economic Development Fund is basically for the future of Oconee County to help us grow and to keep everything moving along as far as our industries. That millage jumped to 2.1, so there was a mill added there for the FY '24 year. And the bridge and culverts is maintenance and replacements of bridges and culverts. And it's been the 1 mill for as long as it was established. Now, the capital equipment and vehicle, that is the replacement of our fleet, when we need replacements, and we started that to build a fund balance because it was really hurting the general fund when we were having such a huge capital vehicle and equipment. But this way, this fund balance can build up, and that way we can plan more and budget wisely in the future for replacement of our vehicles. PRT is 1 mil, and that's for upgrades and new projects to our parks. Okay, fire and emergency services, capital vehicle and equipment, that is also another new fund with 2 mills for the anticipation of building that fund balance also to help with the growth and the replacement of these vehicles. In the past, we have done several fire trucks or engines all at one time, and now they're all giving out all at one time. So, we need to plan and provide for that. And then another new fund is the one-time capital, which is also 2 mills, and for the same reason, to keep our general fund as just our operational. And our capital we can build to replace those things in the future. Okay, enterprise fund. This year, we're transferring $750,000 to general fund. The other $250,000 is going to remain in the rock quarry, but it's going to be placed for the purchase of capital land around their surroundings there, and start building a fund for that. Well, in Oconee County's financial outlook remains conservative and consistent. And that's basically the rundown of the financials. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Brock?
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. This time we'll be bringing up for consideration and council approval of the 2024 strategic plan initiatives. Just topping it out. Thanks, Jen. This was a great strategic planning meeting this time, because I feel like the word planning should be emphasized here. Everyone's looking a little bit further down the road than we have in previous years. And there were several initiatives that were 2 or more or 3 or more council members, and those will receive priority in the upcoming budget preparation. So obviously, we hold a strategic planning retreat every year to review the previous year's accomplishments, which this year were vast. Again, hitting record after record after record, and to establish goals for the upcoming year. Prioritize longer-term goals. That's an emphasis here. Development standards, compensation wage, golden corner, solid waste long-range plan. All of these things are looking a little further down the road than we had in previous years. And I do want to give kudos for allowing staff to look a little bit further down the road. This is the first year I've asked staff to submit a 3-year budget plan. While we know those numbers may not be solidified, anything can come up at any time. What we're looking for is what those departmental outlooks may be looking like in the future. So we're going to go over the council priorities first, and then we'll discuss some of the things we've received back from departments. Significant increases looking over the next 3 years in departmental wants and needs. A lot of it has related to do with capital equipment and or one-time capital. So that's great that those funds have been established and set aside, because we're not seeing a whole lot of increase in requests for general operating. So the Tier 1 priorities this year is the only one that was prioritized by 4 council members during the strategic planning retreat. And it was obviously the implementation for the compensation wage and time use study. I do want to highlight, though, that for 4 consecutive years, council has addressed in some form or fashion, whether that be cost of living, requesting merit-based increases, increasing sheriff's officers' minimum, last year bringing sheriff's officers' minimums up again along with firefighters, addressing boots on the ground departments. This priority and this plan for us to implement the compensation wage and time use study plan will be a significant tool for us in retention and recruitment of new employees. We have still 41 positions open at this time. About 20% of those are part-time positions that have been vacant or either have had a significant turnover in the last 36 months. So I want to take 1/3 of those off the table. So when we look at the other vacancies within the county, 2 of them are in my office and we're making do with them. But we have significant fewer shortages in the boots on the ground departments than we did. We have a couple that we still need to work on, but we're doing a lot better there. I didn't include an estimation on the PowerPoint because I didn't receive the email until after I had created this. Obviously, the recommendation for this would be for the consideration and approval from council for us to work on the implementation. $2 million was a ballpark figure that the representatives at Evergreen, which is the company that's doing the comp and wage and time use study, has given us. What that's inclusive of as of 4:30 today, I did not know. It can be an earmarked dollar amount that we're looking at, but before we build our first budget document, we will have some documentation from them on what their expectation may be for that implementation. And if that implementation looks like more than 2 years, that will come back to council for consideration and approval. It won't just be automatically added in. Again, that's the only tier 1 priority. The tier 2 priorities, these are great too. These are some we've seen before and one we haven't seen before. Golden Corner Commerce Park site improvements. Later this evening, you will be considering and hopefully approving the bid for the mass grading at Golden Corner for the 62-acre pad-ready site. We're ready to start rolling on the next plan for development of Golden Corner Commerce Park. Second one is the solid waste long-range plan / equipment replacement. Mr. Mize, I really appreciate you bringing this one to light after your committee meeting, specifically because Oconee County does have a one-time capital fund and a capital vehicle equipment replacement fund. Say that past 3 times. But the cost of the equipment to operate at the landfill would simply wipe out those funds. So I'm glad that we can kind of pull that one aside. For us looking into a longer range plan though, and you'll see my recommendation here, is for us to start looking at a more comprehensive plan that may be inclusive, solid waste, fire, sheriff substations, because if the county owns a parcel of land that may not be useful any longer for the limitations for solid waste recycling centers, that specific parcel of land, may, if it's strategically located, could be identified as a good use moving forward for either a fire substation or a sheriff substation or both. So we'd like for council to give us the ability to look into this in a more comprehensive way. For instance, the main convenience center at number 10, which is at Ebenezer, Burnt Tan Yard, that area. It's kind of landlocked where it is, so the footprint for expansion for the convenience center might not be ideal for solid waste, but it may be an ideal location for a future fire station. So there may be some things we could look at there so that we're not looking at one plan and separately looking at another plan, essentially siloing out divisions. For the capital vehicle replacement, last year we included that on the bottom of the page for the one-time capital funds as not a consideration because it was about $5 million. On this evening's council agenda, you will be considering a budget amendment. And I believe that we will be able to squeeze out a CAT 973 for the landfill out of this budget amendment, out of the one-time capital this evening. Just happened to be that we had more earned interest income. And if we allocate that earned interest income to the one-time capital, that would allow us to go ahead and look at that purchase for the 973, which is the big compactor loader at the landfill. The sheriff's officer salary structure and weapons upgrade. The salary structure, and I'm glad Sheriff is here, if I'm speaking out of line, just speak up. We've met several times to discuss entry salaries. Sheriff feels that the entry salaries are pretty competitive right now, and he's satisfied with letting those remain at $47,500 for uncertified. What he needs to address, though, is the compression in between the ranks of some of his longer standing and senior staff. That allocation can be made if council approves this plan for us in the 2024-2025 upcoming budget. And the weapons upgrade, I'm hoping we will be able to utilize again those earned interest income funds for us to do that weapons upgrade in the current budget year so that that doesn't have to wait for another year. Tier 3 priorities. So these priorities were identified by only 2 council members. But I still feel like they're worth discussing, and I feel like they're worth trying to wiggle into the budget and into the county's plan as we can.
Of course, everything that council prioritizes is worthwhile looking at. But if at least two council members have given a directive that they would like attention and or monetize some of the priorities listed under tier 3, and that we find a way to do those throughout the course of the budget year, whether they are budgeted or not, just like the weapons upgrade and the CATS 973. If there's an amendment coming, we will keep these on the front burner, so to speak, for consideration to work into. So the increased road funding and millage, again, that would be a worked into. We'll be working through the budget document. We don't have a first draft yet. I think we have some rough numbers. We're still waiting on the biggest number to come in, and that is the recommendation for the implementation for the comp and wage study. But if there is adequate funding in the general fund for there to be an allocation to road millage, or if the paving contract comes back in a way, there are possibilities on how council and administration and staff can work together to get some of these done. Enhanced voting security. So we do have a security assessment of Pine Street as a whole and the security assessment and analysis done by the Department of Homeland Security for early voting precinct. This was not an ideal situation this year. 2020 brought about a whole new world of voting at Pine Street, because before that it was absentee voting, and we weren't in position to see 800 to 1,200 voters a day, which we do now. We are currently working with Captain at the Sheriff's Office over internal security to update the plan. He does have some recommendations. Because that's a security measure, we won't highlight those recommendations here, but if any one of you would like those recommendations coming from the law enforcement side, happy to share with them one-on-one. Continued momentum for Sewer South, engineering to exits 1, 2, 4, and Durham Road. Engineering for exit 4 will be approved and sent to the Sewer Authority for their approval, then come back to council for approval to go out to bid. Engineering for exits 1 and 2, all we have to do is say when. It's that simple, and I hope that we can get that rolling quickly. Oconee County Quarry, we had a catastrophic failure again today. It looks like an electrical issue. Let me grab my phone. There was a lot of different things that happened today at the quarry, and you can tell in the tone of Billy's writing that it was just a difficult time this afternoon. And this may come up at council, and I'm happy to read this again. But Tuesday, March 5th, most of the plant started as expected this morning. We got to the last function, a piece of equipment called the feeder, and it did not start. There were no faults, which there was nothing showing on the screen as an indication of a problem. We called the electrician. In 3 hours, he determined there was no electrical issue, and the problem was a low pressure on a pinion gear on a USS 550. They pulled the hose for the gear and found granular activity in there. So probably what happened is the pump realized there was some grit in there, and the pump automatically stopped. Yes, Mr. Hart?
Be prepared. You're gonna have people coming into council meeting
There's
complaining.
nothing I can do to prepare for that, but I appreciate that.
could
If I
leave
could fix
town.
that crusher, I would. If the guys could fix the crusher, they would. After speaking with Tom and Billy today, we had several staff members that worked more than 80 hours last week and several that worked more than 95 hours in 1 week. There's simply not a whole lot more they can do hands-on. We did not receive the support from Sandvik that they had anticipated. 2 different representatives from Sandvik had one issue or another. I believe one was a family issue, possibly a death in the family. I'm not positive. Some things you can control and some things you can't. And what does that serenity prayer say? Give me the strength to control the things I can, the knowledge to know the difference. Anyway, the recommendation for the quarry, it's comprehensive too. And as I've told y'all before, all the simple problems have already been solved. So you guys got to draw the short straw sometimes. What we'd like to do is perform a comprehensive evaluation for possible solutions that may be inclusive of price increases across the board, price increases simply for out of county or out of state, authorizing scheduled maintenance days. I think that's the kicker. 2 years ago, quarry staff requested authorized scheduled maintenance days so that you can physically tear the piece of equipment apart and look on the inside of it. Anybody that wants to go to the quarry and look, obviously we can do this at any time. But if they can't see it, they can't fix it. They come to work at 5 in the morning. They work till 7 p.m. At 5 in the morning, they can't see inside the piece of equipment. You have to have a certain amount of daylight to be able to work on it. And the expectation is that we're open daylight to dusk. And that expectation is normal and it's fine. It's just not a sustainable method of operation at the quarry. And then we need to continue to authorize the property purchase plan. That particular point was for the second crusher operation. One, we don't have room for a second crusher at the plant facility right this minute. Number two is if we keep crushing more than the current plan calls for, we're gonna have to create a property purchase plan because sooner or later, we're gonna run out of rock to crush. And I don't mean in my tenure here, but it will be a shorter period of time that the quarry is able to operate if we stay consistently ahead of schedule on what we should be blasting on the set schedule that DHEC provided to us. I did, okay. Improvement of development standards, this council initiative addresses the desire for implementation. I don't know who watched the planning commission meeting last night, but apparently you're not alone in that thought to work to improve development standards. The recommendation there, of course, is to continue working with planning commission to create a structure and plan for that and direct staff for the implementation of such. Increased staffing and building codes. This one was kind of a conundrum too. So we're not short on staff. We're short on staff, let me say that. We're not short on number of positions that are authorized for the department. We have 4 vacancies in building codes right now. We do have one in the hiring process, so we will have 3 vacancies in building codes. And I didn't want y'all to think I was being flippant when I said council consideration for the approval of the comp and wage. But that comp and wage may be directly tied to our inability to recruit certified and licensed inspectors. And increased financial allocation to volunteer fire stations. Well, the upside of that is, again, the creation of that special millage fund. As the millage continues to grow and the dollar value of the mill continues to increase, those allocations both to volunteer fire stations, rescue squads, and Prisma could continue to rise as that millage increase occurs. Any questions so far? Whoops. And then single initiatives. I listed these as well because these are always things that we keep on the back burner. Anytime anybody's been in my office, you'll see that sticky notes that we put up on the wall in here kind of stay in there for a little while. So it's a fresh reminder to me for us to stay on target and keep our sights on what council's initiatives were. I don't have recommendations for these. Sometimes these are like the things that get woven into the fabric of how we do operations just on a normal basis. But just for clarity, I'll go over those. The completion of the junkyard ordinance, I believe there's first reading tonight. This is the one Mr. Mize caught me on. So the previous report I'd emailed you guys today said demolition of the Fair Oak Elementary School, and Mr. Mize said, I don't believe you better do that, so I don't believe we better do that. So how about we work with ACOG for the grant administration for the demo of the former Fair Play Elementary School. The increase for emergency services staffing levels, enlarge the Fair Play Fire Department, construction of a fire station at Wells Highway, Shaw-Ram, and High Falls County Parks master plans, implementation of 3 to 5 year plans for each one of the special revenue funds or capital funds, identification of feasible use or demolition of the former courthouse, increased funding for ambulance service specifically to Prisma, and construction of an air traffic control tower at Oconee Regional. Again, some of these things are going to be woven into the normal operations. For instance, tonight we'll be discussing one or more of these matters. And there'll be plenty of other discussions regarding your Tier 2 priorities and one of your Tier 3 priorities. And again, we'll be waiting on the results coming back for the wage and comp study. We are in eyebrow deep in that process. Yes, sir, Mr. Hart.
When I was at the ACOG meeting, I asked the lady in charge of the Fair Play demolition, and she said that she was getting a report that Friday. Has she made that report to you?
No, sir.
Okay.
Is that the grants administrator?
Yep.
I have her contact information. Would you like me to reach out to her?
Yeah, I'd like for you to reach out to her, because she was gonna have I guess, who was it, DHEC was gonna furnish a grant, and she was supposed to find something out about it within the next 2 days after we were there, so I'd like
That's
to
through the
know.
SC Best program, is that right?
I
went and
imagine
met
you're
with
right.
them. I believe that's.
But anyway, she was supposed to be in communication with those people. And I'd like to know how that's moving along.
Absolutely. I will follow up as soon as I hear anything worth sharing. Are there questions?
I got a question on the
Yes, sir.
old courthouse. Do we have any estimates yet on how much it would cost to tear it
No,
down?
sir, we did the phase one, and we'll have to do some council approval for what's next. So the demolition would depend on what you're gonna do with the site, because most places won't come in and demo and leave a hole. As you know, it was a former bomb shelter, and it has a full basement. Part of it is still dirt, like on the backhand side and the side that's closest to the new courthouse and to the rock building. There's a lot of, like a dirt bunker in there. But if we're gonna leave a hole in the ground, we can't. The other thing there's underground utilities in the front. We have sent out requests for those utilities. Now, the courthouse itself doesn't have any use for utility, but there's a large, it looks like a communication possibly handhold, maybe AT&T, I'm not 100% positive, but it does look like there's, significant underground utility right there between the old and new courthouses. It's a slow process for that sort of thing.
Any other questions?
Perfect.
Any other matters anybody wants to bring up in the budget? If not, is a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.